So I guess for me, the real issue is the power of what we as individuals can do. There's so much there. And whether that's individuals who are coming together and working together in community groups, whether it's volunteering through nonprofits, whether it's the work that we do and that's our passion, there's so much in terms of our individual choices. And that's what it keeps boiling down to for me, is around our choices that we make. We really make a difference in terms of what kind of environment is left for future generations. And that's important to me.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm at Port Townsend in the Puget Sound area of Washington State, and I'm with somebody that's local and busy doing things for her community. My guest is Sally Lovell.
Lovell, yes.
Thank you. You've been part of the group that's called Local 2020. What is that? And other groups, but what are you doing?
Actually, Local 2020 is newly formed in our community. We just started maybe 8 months ago, started meeting. We were inspired by Willits, California, and what they were doing there in terms of local economic sustainability issues. And part of that also springs from having seen some films like The End of Suburbia, The End of Oil. And so our community wanted, the people that attended some of the showings and heard Brian Weller from Willits speak, wanted to get together and say, how can we help prepare our community to be stronger in the coming years, stronger economically and environmentally, and more sustainable. We know that there's a lot of good work already going on in our community, and so how do we help bring that volunteer citizen engagement and help further what's already being done and take it to new places also, you know, things that we get excited about. So basically bring your passion to the group and see, you know, how that fits in and help build those bridges. And so we actually the early meetings, we decided that there were a number of topics that all seemed critical and that people at the group had interests in. We ended up forming 12 different action groups.
Okay, what are they?
Oh, I can't name them all. But examples would be local economy, water, transportation, shelter, energy. And so there's a lot of different kinds of groups that have come together, people working for these, food and agriculture. Yes.
Giving back.
Giving back is the group that really is looking at kind of documenting our process so that we can give back not only to our own community, but also to other communities that want to start a program like that. So they've been doing a lot of work around documenting the things that are happening and the process we go through. Trainings that we have, outreach programs that are happening. Outreach is another one, community education outreach. So it just gives you a flavor for what those wild areas is another one. Let's see, they come to me slowly.
They're there.
And I am currently kind of the lead person for the water action group.
Okay, water.
Water is something that I've been interested in for a long time, but haven't done anything about. It's one of those, you know, caring about the environment and environmental stewardship has been something that's been with me many, many years. But although water was an interest, I never actually did anything about it until I went to the Local 2020 meeting. And there, out of all the different action groups, you know, there were at least 4 I wanted to be in all at the same time. And I don't have that much volunteer time. I had to pick one. And that particular day, there was only one person at the water action group, and that was one of my 4 interests. And I said, fine, I'll go get involved with water. And directly,
you stayed with it.
I stayed with it because I thought, it's time. I've been interested in this, now it's time. I'm going to delve into it. And one of the first things that I found out that I wanted to do was at our WSU Extension in our community, they've got a great program called Water Watchers, and it's like an 8-week course, and they train people from the community that have an interest about the different water issues in our watershed and what kinds, they network, they bring speakers in so that we're networking in terms of who's working on what issues and what they are. Terrific amounts of information. So after I got involved with the Water Action Group, I went and took this class at WSU.
So is this one session a week kind of thing?
No, it's 2 sessions a week. It's very intense.
Really?
Within 1 month, you go to these 8
wow.
weeks. It's an intense course. And so that's kind of one of its downsides, is that you need to have enough free time to be able to get engaged in it. So if you're working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, it's not going to work.
Right.
But nonetheless, it's an absolutely terrific program, and it's resulted in a lot of a volunteer network of people that are doing a lot of things around watershed issues. So anyway, I was able to learn some things from that to help that learning curve I had, and particularly around engaging with who else is out there, what else is going on. Because one of the early things that we did in our Local 2020 was to say, here we are, citizens coming together, and we're saying, we don't even really know what's already going on in our community because we're just showing up because we're interested and we want to do something, and we want to do something constructive.
Right.
And there's this whole world of people out there who that's their job, it's their work, it's their passion, they're involved.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, we want to hook up with them. They're the ones doing the lion's share of the work.
That's
Let's
right.
find out what's going on. Find out how we can help. Find out, maybe they've got a project that they haven't been able to have the labor hours to put into it. Well, how can our grassroots volunteers come together and say, well, that sounds interesting. I'd like to help you pursue that. How can I help? Or how can I help connect the dots?
Yes, yes.
And how does that connect with what I'm excited about? So, for example, at the Water Watchers class, there's a lot in there about the marine environment, fish habitat, those kinds of things. But my interest is more freshwater and home conservation and our development and how that impacts our surface water. So those are the areas that I was most interested in, and where I was, rapidly making notes, trying to make those connections.
Right. So what have you done? So out of that and your interests and so on, what are you doing since you're concerned about conserving freshwater?
Yeah, conserving and making sure that it's not polluted. I mean, those are kind of my real issues. And in fact, for our Water Action Group committee, those are kind of the 2 main thrusts that we have initially. And it branches out into a lot of other things where we want to go and where we want to put our energy. But for myself personally, I guess one of the things that I want to get people to connect with is, why is conserving water important? It's one of those things that we don't really talk about. It's like government has said conserving water is important, therefore, these are the low-flow devices that are now mandated to be used. In fact, I'm very pleasantly surprised to know that down at the hardware store you can only get low-flow things. I mean,
is that right?
So that's neat for me. But so it makes the stuff that we've done at homes, in a sense, not as cutting edge because it's broad-based. But I don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about why. Why do we bother conserving? So we get the low-flow stuff when we get the new appliance, but
you don't think about it, maybe.
Yeah, there's still no engagement in terms of why does it even matter, which means I can still leave the tap running, or I can go water not thinking about what kind of yard I have or what kind of plantings I have. If I'm not engaged at that level, why does it matter? So to me, one of the things that I've been looking at over the last 6 months is sort of, where does our water come from? Now in our area, our region, our water for the municipal system is coming from a river that's about 28 miles away.
Okay.
And it's piped in, gravity fed, and that feeds the municipal water system.
Okay.
Okay. So the people who are on the municipal water system, why is conserving water important? Well, the river's always flowing. What does it really matter? It's available. Why should I care?
Right.
But one of the reasons why one should care is because one of the effects of global warming in our region in particular, that river is fed by the mountains and the snowpack on the mountains.
So you're going to have less.
With the effect of warming, we're finding that there's less and less snow. It's barren, there's less snowpack to feed it through the summer. So we're going to have more drought than we've had. Typically, there is a drought through the summer here, but being able to preserve enough water within the stream is called in-stream flows, and our government is working together within the region, within the watershed, to figure out how much water needs to be left in the river so that we pipe off less.
Aha.
And what are those numbers, and how does that work for what the needs are of the people living here? So more and more, the municipal users, it's not a free-flowing, it's, we just have it because it's there, the river always flows.
That's right.
But we do need to be concerned about drought issues.
So part of your municipal level is going to be having people realize there's going to be less.
Yes.
And particularly as you grow and have more people here,
Right.
there's even going to be more demand, more pressure on,
Exactly.
on that diminishing resource.
Right. Now, you have to understand that there's also a rural environment.
Right.
Port Townsend is not a large town, and within the county surrounding it, there's a lot of us, myself included, who are on wells.
Okay.
So now let's talk about not
Groundwater.
municipal water, but the people on wells that are
Yes.
drawing from groundwater and drawing from the aquifer. So why is conservation important there? Because if I just let my water run, isn't it just going to go back and recharge? Not necessarily.
Aha.
It depends on what the soils are. It depends on what the landscape, what's the topography of your
Right.
property. There's so much that, it's all underground. You can't tell just standing there knowing
Sure,
whether or not you're going to
sure.
recharge the aquifer.
Sure.
And to me, when I think in terms of my well, I know my well is connected to the wells of all my neighbors. The more
Right.
that we have neighbors move
Right.
in, the more demand there's going to be on whatever aquifer
So
that is. How big it is. No, we don't know
And you
how
don't
big
know
it
because
is.
it's all hidden.
If there's new industry that moves in down the block that uses a lot of water, they'll be drawing off that
Right.
same aquifer.
Right.
I need to care about that. Furthermore, we're in a peninsula. We're surrounded on three sides by salt water, the Puget Sound.
Okay.
And so less than 1 mile in one direction from my home is salt water, and less than 2 miles in another direction is salt water. And the other thing that happens is when you draw from freshwater aquifers, you draw from the groundwater, if you're close at all to a saltwater area, you can be setting up a situation where salt water begins
Starts
to
to fill.
intrude. It's called saltwater intrusion or seawater intrusion.
Okay.
And it ends up, when you draw out the water pressure is such that the salt water moves in. And so actually we've had areas along the shoreline where saltwater intrusion has made wells unusable.
And is that fairly recent? Or is it
I
just
don't know the
varies, it
answer.
varies over time? Because I wonder whether you have any sense of whether you're drawing down that, what the limits may be to that aquifer. Does anyone even have any sense?
In the class, I was able to see that there were maps about marked wells that have had along the shoreline. It has happened. In terms of the timing, I don't have the answer to that. The other thing, of course, is that you can be in a place where the well goes dry. And I look at our place and I think, if our well goes dry, or if our well becomes contaminated, not just with salt water, but with any kind of contaminants,
Right.
what are we going to do? Our options are rather limited, and you can think of many towns throughout the history of this country where people have basically had to abandon the town
because the water's
because
resources
the water
dried
isn't
up.
there.
Yeah, we can't live without it.
Right.
There's a lot of things that are optional, but that one isn't.
So when we talk about why conserve, to me, whether you're on municipal or whether you're on groundwater, your well systems, it makes sense for all of us to be conserving. And one of the things that I was startled to learn, and it's well known, but I didn't know it before taking the class, was through the Midwest. There's one huge, gigantic aquifer called the Ogallala Aquifer, and that the irrigation that's happening for agriculture throughout that area, the entire middle of our country, the breadbasket, and the irrigation that's happening there is drawing down that aquifer.
Yes, yes.
Well, the other danger of drawing down aquifers, besides the ones I mentioned, is that it can compact. And this is what they told us in the class, is that if you draw it down enough, that you begin to see compaction, like the soil's sinking.
Of the soil.
Yes. Basically, that aquifer is damaged beyond repair. It is no longer an aquifer. It cannot be recharged. Rainwater will not go back because the air spaces where the water was have settled and been filled with soil.
I
So that's the
see.
compaction
In
of
a
the
sense,
water
you've built a
aquifer.
wall.
Yes.
By
you filled it
compacting
in.
the soil.
Exactly. So that's another reason why I think it's important that we pay attention to our water usage.
Absolutely. I'll bet that has changed one or two of your habits, maybe.
Well,
Or
actually,
you were already on that wavelength.
I was already on that wavelength within the home. My husband and I both care very much for trying to live as lightly on the planet as we can do and still be comfortable. And there's so many choices that we can make. And everybody's going to have a different set of choices about what they're comfortable with or not. And so we're doing things that I know other people would turn up their noses at.
Well, that's good. Let's go dig in and find out what those are, because I would imagine for some people they might not have any idea what's possible.
Right.
Because they've thought about this level, and you're just up in the ante through your own actions.
Yeah, a personal choice to up the ante
Yes.
for myself. It's
Yes.
like, well, okay, I've done this now, and as we've been together, we've run into those key moments. Now I'll give you, this is
Give me some examples
broader
here.
ranging than water, because I'll tell you, a number of years ago, I went to a conference called a Bioneers Conference, and I heard one of the people speak about the importance of credit unions in terms of within the community and keeping money within a community,
Right.
and how vital that was. She talked about communities where, so we came back from that, and I said, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's put our money into the local credit union.
Right.
And at that point, we transferred all our funds. Just like finding the importance of agriculture and local agriculture and local organic or sustainable practices of agriculture, the small farms. And so I want to put my money where my mouth is. So there came the day when I said, all right, let's sign up for a farm share, a community-supported agriculture.
Okay.
There's a farm doing it, and it's got its inconveniences attached to it, but on the other hand, it's such a good side, let's do it.
All right.
Or let's put our money where our mouth is and stop buying the sale items at the big grocery store, and let's go to the food co-op and purchase organic only. We're going to make this commitment. For myself, I would say, oh, well, I don't know, the organic avocado is more expensive than the non-organic. I don't think I really need that for me. I'll get the non-organic because it's less expensive. But when my husband would say the same thing, I'd say, no, I want you to have the organic. It's worth money. And we did that with each other. So we got ourselves past that price issue and said, this value is important to us. It's important to us because of the environment. It's important to us because more so than the health issue, although the health issue is right up there.
Sure.
It's like, we want to support this movement. And so we made that decision. It was a decision point, and then we changed our style.
What you're talking about here, all about those local choices, is that you are investing in your locality, not just you're thinking your identity has moved past just you as a solo person or even as a couple. Because if you are buying from your community-supported local farmer, you're thinking about that farmer is going to be still here because that farmer is supported creating local agriculture, so that down the road when it is more expensive to truck it up your peninsula because of the gas prices and diesel prices, that farmer is still there making that produce.
Right.
And that price will seem less expensive,
Right.
of course, when it's compared. You're also making a commitment to your community by keeping your money here.
Right.
So I think that I just want to point out, it's not just you anymore. You are your community, is what I hear from you that you're doing.
Right, exactly.
Including you are your community's water.
Well, and you've got that point. That's absolutely true. And then there's the larger system as well. Because I'll tell you, plenty of the organic food that we buy is, of course, trucked in from further distances because that's where it's being produced.
Right.
We don't produce enough food within our community to support our local population. We just don't at this point. One of the action groups, Food and Farm with Local 2020, is working with people who are already heavily invested, including WSU Extension, with the Food and Farm Network and local food production. And how do we help look down the road to like year 2020. And how do we get more self-reliant with regard to food production?
Yes.
So part of it is around that, and part of it is also more systemic, which is the organic. I want to support organic, even if it means it's coming from Wisconsin. I want to support it.
I appreciate that, since there's a lot of organic food produced in California where I'm from.
That's right.
We just want to make sure that and some of ours comes from Mexico. So, so wherever we can get it, it's more sustainable. It helps everybody, everywhere, and particularly if we can get it more and more local.
Right.
Going back to some of your behavior changes, the habits that you have or have had, in terms of what do you do to conserve water? Let's go back to that, Kat.
All right, let's start there and see where it branches out to. So we purchased a used washing machine that actually it reuses the wash water, and well, we were
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is. Although what we found out is it's old enough that it turns out that the new machines that are the front-loading water-saving machines actually save more water than what our existing one does.
That's good for people to know. There are front loaders that are if you're going to have to buy a new one,
right?
That are going to save water.
Water efficient, and it seems to be that's what you can get again because of mandating about appliances and water.
Well, there are a lot of regions, and there are going to be people who are listening to this who don't have that mandated, who have other choices possible, who could still get a nice big top loader. You know, so for them to be thinking, go for the front loader, go look at their water efficiency.
Right.
Okay.
Talk to them about that because it's like half the water usage.
Ooh,
yeah,
big.
Between the standard appliance and the water saving ones.
Okay.
Another thing that we did is we have a low flow shower head.
Okay.
We both shower rather than take baths. I know some friends of mine who prefer baths, but I thought, well, I want to see how much water each one uses. So I put the plug in the tub, and I took my normal standard shower, and I looked at what was left in the bottom, and I said, you know what? To me, that would be a very cold option because there was about this much water in the tub. And I thought, no, I'm not going to take a bath. You know, it's a no-brainer as to which uses less water.
Yeah.
But we also added to our low-flow shower head a little, what's called an interrupter, a flow interrupter.
Oh, they can just turn it off.
It's a little valve
that
up at the shower head. And the reason that is neat is because you can set your temperature settings, start your shower, and then you just turn off that little valve. The shower stops while you soap up. Then you can just turn it back on, and you don't have to deal with messing with the hot and cold water thing anymore.
It's still nice, the right temperature.
It's just the right temperature.
Cool.
Yes.
Or warm.
Yes, exactly. Another thing that we do is we live in a trailer where it's probably 40 feet from where the hot water tank is to the kitchen sink. And, you know, I mean, there's a distance for most places. I mean, it's very typical. You turn on the tap and you wait a while for the hot water to come.
That's right.
Meanwhile, all that water's going down the drain. Well, we thought, we don't like this. So what we do is we take that cold water and we fill up the tea kettle because our kitchen sink is right next to the stove.
Yep.
So we don't even wait for the hot water to come. What we do is we heat it up on the stove, and then we take our dishpan and we start pouring the cold water. We mix equal amounts of cold and hot water into the dishpan, and we don't even have to wait for the hot water to arrive.
Okay, confessions. What we do, we're on a demand hot water system.
Yes.
So we too have to wait a little bit for the water to come in, but we may or may not need to do dishes at this time.
Right.
So I take my extra dishpan, my rinse dishpan, and it goes into buckets. We have some of the white 5-gallon buckets, and so that water is used in our house for flushing the toilet because the house we have, it doesn't have the low flow. There's not enough pressure to do that. So we just have a flush bucket set, you know, so that actually, here's the rest of True Confessions, is that we collect our rinse water from the laundry. From the, you know, we have the hose comes out and we can collect buckets, and so we have this little bucket brigade when the rinse comes. That's the flush water collection.
Okay.
And in winter, because we don't have the rain barrel system, which you do in your communities, those buckets go out on the eaves, and that's our flush buckets for winter when we do have rain.
Okay.
Now, not everybody's going to want the inconvenience of a set of buckets in their utility room.
Right.
For us, it's a reminder. For me, it's a reminder that even though we live in an area where we've got a lot more rain in the winter than you do, we get maybe 50 or 60 inches, that water is still a precious resource. And I want to use it well.
Right.
Use it a couple times before it goes back into the ground.
Bingo. And another thing I've seen people do is take that water and use it to water plants indoors or water plants outdoors.
Sure.
So that's another possibility.
Because you can get laundry soaps. I mean, your cold water from your sink as it gets hot is certainly clean, fresh water. But even laundries, they now have soaps that are biodegradable and that are fine for your plants.
Right. So that would be one of the things you would look for, or one of the changes you can make. Exactly.
So what else do you do?
Okay. What else do we do?
We have about 3.5 minutes. I bet there's tons.
Oh, well, there's tons. Okay, so now you talked about flush tank toilets. The other thing we did is, now I have never understood why we use fresh drinking water to flush our wastes. And I've always hated that, and I've always lived with flush toilets. I've wanted composting toilet. We had problems with our toilet not flushing completely and having problems with that. It turned out we had the septic tank guy in. It wasn't our septic tank. We thought maybe there was a break in the pipe. We're a little worried about that. Well, what we did is we went and we got a low flow toilet, but we got one that's pressurized. They have them as a vacuum system.
Okay.
And so, and again, we don't have a lot of water pressure either. But with this toilet, this costs more. There's two options at our local hardware store for low-flow toilets, and this one cost more, but it fixed our problem because the vacuum aspect makes the most of the little bit of water that's going through and
pushes
sends
it
it
through.
right out. Yep.
Great.
Yes.
That's good.
So we're still using a water system, but we've years and years and years ago adopted the California motto of the drought conditions,
That's right.
saying if it's yellow, let it mellow.
Yep.
If it's brown, flush it down. Well, one of the problems you can get with that is that you can get a buildup of toilet paper, and that can be a problem.
Sure.
Well, neither my husband or I have really fine noses, so we don't have a problem with the fact that we take the tissue used for urine only, and we separate it out in the bathroom. Our wastebasket is not actually a wastebasket, it's a biodegradables basket.
Uh-huh.
So hair from the hairbrush, lint from the dryer and the washer, the toilet tissues, Kleenexes, they all go into this basket, and they end up getting buried in the yard, or they could go in the compost pile, either one. And so I still didn't get my composting toilet because we live in a trailer, and so you'd need something that's strictly above the floor, and our bathroom is small enough that the footprint of those looked like it was going to be too large for the options that were available to us. But I had recently read a book called The Humanure Handbook.
Show us.
And in fact,
show
I
us.
have it here. This is it.
The Humanure Handbook.
And
Our
this is
last
a
minute.
radical guy who
Joseph Jenkins.
Joseph
All right.
Jenkins, who wrote this book talking about using a bucket system, like a sawdust bucket system, using the sawdust as a cover material as you use the bucket for your toilet, and then taking that to the compost pile where you make sure that the compost pile is mixed correctly with straw or leaves or the appropriate organic matter, and he talks about what those are, to make sure that you get a hot compost. There's two kinds of compost piles, hot and cool.
Right.
So the cool ones molder at a low temperature. The hot ones really, you get a lot of heat in there.
I felt, it's hot.
And
Right.
so with those, you get the killing of the pathogens
okay.
from, any concerns that you have in terms of human waste. So he's documented that. He's talked about, different places that have allowed this for their composting systems. And so he encourages you to kind of go with your local officials. So I approached this week our local officials. Am I running out of time
You have
here?
20 seconds.
Okay. And they're interested in hearing more, and I'm going to be talking to them about possibly sawdust buckets as an emergency toilet system. If we have an earthquake, we lose power, we lose water. What do people do?
There you go.
We need something. So,
Excellent. I expect to hear news that it's when it goes legal for your county.
all right.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
This is great. You're watching Peak Moments, Community Responses for a Changing Energy Future. I'm Janaea Donaldson. Join us next time.